Welcome everybody to the next Sawtooth software webinar. We're excited to have this today, and we're excited to have all of you join us. This is the Smarter Research, Smarter Products webinar, lessons from Leatherman, Bose, and Microsoft. And we're joined today by three excellent guest researchers who will later be presenting at the Sawtooth Research Conference in New Orleans next month. So we're really excited to hear from all three, and we'll be introducing them here in a bit. Before we get started, just want to go over some details here. Here in Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A section. That's what we use to ask the questions, and we don't use the chat. Feel free to ask the questions, type the questions during the webinar. During the presentation, we may be able to answer them, but if not, we will answer them towards the end. We'll have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. With this webinar, with our three guest speakers, please call out in your question who your question's directed to, so we know that. So remember to do that when you're asking your questions. And then we're recording this, so everyone who registered for the webinar will get a recording of the webinar. We are also going to share slides from each of the presenters. This will be a summary of slides, not the full deck, as they will be presenting at the conference, our research conference in May. They'll have their full deck then. So this will be a summary slide deck from each. Few upcoming announcements. As mentioned, coming up May 6th, we have our pre-conference workshops, choice modeling essentials, turbo choice modeling. Super excited for that. Then we go into the regular conference, the Sawtooth Research Conference, SRC, down in New Orleans. This is a fabulous conference. If you haven't had a chance, we recommend that you come, and really you'll get a lot out of it. Very personable, a lot of smart researchers are there you can network with, great content. You'll love it. Then May 22nd, we have another one of these webinars entitled Content Analysis as Expert Witness Evidence. And you can learn more about all of our events at sawtooth.com/events. If you're new to Sawtooth software, we make incredible software tools for market research and other types of research. We recommend that you check us out. We're really good at content analysis and max diff, but you can also do all types of surveys with our software. We are easy to use. We have incredible support, and you can try us for free. We're working on this Discover product that you see a screenshot of here, and we're close to releasing a feature called Relevant Items Max Diff. This is where you can only pull certain items, the items, for example, that the respondent is familiar with, into the max diff. So it's a really cool feature coming very soon. With that, Brian, I'd like to have all four of you share your video. And Brian, Brian Orm, president of Sawtooth Software, is going to introduce our three speakers. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks so much, Justin, and thanks for organizing this. Thanks so much to Tracey, Jordan, and Suhasini for joining us. We've kind of flipped coins to figure out who's going to go first, and Suhasini is going to go first. She is the trilingual senior market research manager at Microsoft, currently leading research on monetization, pricing, and packaging strategy for security, compliance, and privacy, identity, and management. With extensive cross-cultural knowledge and international experience, Suhasini Sanyal integrates qualitative and quantitative research with behavioral and social data to understand customer sentiment. She holds an MA in social psychology from the University of Mumbai and an MSc in social personality psychology from the University of Oregon. We look forward to hearing what you're going to be sharing next month at the conference. And can you give us a little preview?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sawtooth family. And I do want to say thanks for giving me and my colleagues an opportunity to talk in the Sawtooth conference, which is in a few weeks. I feel like last year I had done a presentation in ESOMAR and this year in Sawtooth, and so appreciative of this community because we get to learn so much, leverage our learning and building our own knowledge bank. So thank you once again to Sawtooth and the community, and for folks who's joining us online. So let me start by sharing my slides. Kind of go from there. So I think like first, I'd like to provide some broader context as to what we are up to at Microsoft when it comes to research and AI. And so, with the launch of generative AI, we have been, LLMs as well as like tools such as Microsoft Copilot, Azure OpenAI, ChatGPT. The research and insights team at Microsoft has been on a journey to explore AI tools in customer research. And so as you can see, we have quite a bit of tools in our toolbox. So for example, we have the GitHub Codex that is used for code writing. We use the Visual Studio Code. We also have the TextCrunch Chat, which is really our AI tool for text analytics. And so, we see an opportunity where we can use AI to create efficiencies, to, improve the data quality as well as reduce costs. The caveat being if AI is used correctly and ethically. And so, looking into some of the focus areas in our team that we have for this fiscal, one is leveraging AI for knowledge management. So let me start with a scenario. So you have a new hire in the company who's been tasked to triangulate and synthesize some research insights from, say, 6 to 7 different research studies, with different audiences, different research managers. It is quite a task for that new hire to go to everybody, get introduced, try to kind of understand what they've done, what's the objectives, what the goals, what the audience, what the results were. Not impossible, but just time consuming. And this inspired us to kind of build our own, centralized AI powered research platform, which can mine insights from thousands and thousands of Microsoft IPs in minutes. And we also have, in addition to this, we also have a chat assistant, so you can leverage the chat assistant to perhaps, have queries on, the key insights or maybe digging a little deeper into an industry vertical. So it's not just improve search. The second focus area is an AI audience assistant tool. Again, think of a scenario where you have your engineering team building a product roadmap, but they are not quite sure what features to prioritize. Or we have another marketing team who, are refining their messaging framework and don't have enough budget to keep spinning off new research to test the messaging framework. This is when the AI audience assistant tool comes handy, where with the help of that, we can provide real-time insights, recommendation through AI-powered personas. The one thing critical to note here is that this is not replacing traditional research. We all need traditional research. This tool needs traditional research. We are all dependent on it. But it's these, in some use cases, that it comes really handy, for concept testing, for message testing, or feature prioritization. Now, if you have a question such as small, medium businesses, what do they think of security, which is very exploratory, this tool wouldn't be a good fit for that. So there are some specific use cases that this comes really handy. And the third goal that we have is harnessing the power of text. Now, in my team especially, we do a lot of conjoint pricing studies and trying to solve complex business problems, which in turn leads to complex research designs. And so, though we have been successful in kind of giving responses to what's the revenue maximizing price point or the share maximizing price point, but we've always felt that we did not understand the whys, right? Like the reasons why the respondents have chosen the choices that they've been given. Why did they do that? So, in order to address that gap, we have started using AI probes, open ends with AI probes in our trackers in most of our quant surveys, where we've just kind of strategically inserted these open ends to understand a little more nuanced reasoning of the choices they are making. And then another thing that we have done is we have also used AI assisted interviews. So what does that mean? So now, instead of humans moderating interviews, we have used platforms that are built on Azure OpenAI, and they are assisting interviews to see whether is that a way to scale qualitative in-depth interviews. Now that we have a broader context, let me kind of dive into what exactly we'll be talking in the Sawtooth conference, as well as the focus areas of our paper for the conference. So for this, we have been exploring AI and unstructured data to improve, data quality in our conjoint studies. And for that, we have come up with these 3 experiments that we'll be digging a little deeper into for the conference. The first initial experiment was really a standard conjoint experiment, and comparing that with a conjoint survey, which had open-ended questions with AI follow-up. And this study was, again, to test willingness to pay for a particular SKU, among other things. And so what was the setup like? So it was a split sample study where the control group had a conjoint survey with no open ends. And then we had an experimental group that had a conjoint study with 3 or 4 open ends with AI follow-up probes. And what was the hypothesis? Now, we have a few challenges in our conjoint exercises, right? Like one is, does it improve data quality? So going in, we thought that maybe this could give us an AI, a better model fit to the training data, which is a little more closely aligned to what the real world SKU mix or product mix is. It could perhaps improve the sensitivity of our model. Now, again, we do not know for sure what the price sensitivity is in the real world, but again, does it align a little more closely to the expected behavior in the marketplace? And secondly is, enhancing the respondent experience. Now, with this AI probes and open-ended questions, we think that you are more deeply engaging the respondents and hoping that they would give more thoughtful and considerate feedback. Now, does that hold true? So more on the results in the conference, but I would like to say that at least the results have been encouraging. Now, to build on this, we had a second experiment where we really wanted to test, what about voice responses? Does that improve anything in our conjoint models or the survey experience? So again, this was a split sample study where the control group had the standard way of responding in our conjoint surveys, which is by text. And then we had an experimental group where we replaced the text-based responses to voice-based responses. And the use of voice capture was flagged from the beginning, and the respondents had to agree to turn up their microphone on the browser for them to continue. And we also felt like this would also improve the quality of open ends because you're deeply engaging. And since, there is, we're adding more depth and authenticity for these feedback, it could perhaps also be used additionally for respondent verification. We also wanted to test what impact it has on our model results. And in terms of our results, again, very encouraging, which we will be talking a little more deeply in our conference. However, we also would like to share some of our precautions, some learnings here specifically that need to be considered for future research. And lastly, we had the third and final experiment where we wanted to test AI as moderators in our in-depth interviews. And so for this, we had two studies where the first study was the standard in-depth interview where the where the human is moderating the interviews and having these guided conversations. And the second study was basically augmenting it by having AI as a moderator for these in-depth interviews. And this was done by a third-party platform built on Azure OpenAI. And again, what were some of the thinking and the hypothesis that went into it? Typically, in-depth interviews, qualitative research is pretty expensive. So having these AI moderated interviews, does that help scale our in-depth interviews? And we also had another question whether conversational AI can work for all types of audiences across multiple use cases and research studies. Again, not getting into the details of our results, but this will be covered by my colleague at the conference more deeply. And so in general, I would just like to end by saying that, in Microsoft, our use of AI is steeped in a pretty rigorous assessment criteria that involves data ownership, data privacy, IP ownership, AI expertise, and that's it. I think that's my time, Brian.
Thank you so much. With that, we will turn the floor over to Tracey. A little introduction for Tracey. Tracey Di Lascio-Martinuk is the principal quantitative researcher for consumer research and insights at Bose Corporation. As the quantitative team lead, Tracey collaborates with cross-functional teams to design and implement research programs that incorporate the voice of the customer into product design, marketing strategies, and portfolio development. Partnering with marketing and product development teams, she translates critical business questions into actionable insights, utilizing statistical techniques, machine learning and predictive models, market simulations, and advanced quantitative survey methodologies. Thank you so much, Tracey, for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit of what you will be covering at the conference?
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. It always makes me sound so fancy. It's like a fancy way of saying I sit around talking about music and numbers all day, which are my two favorite things. So let me share my screen. This is always a fun technical exercise here. Okay. See if we can get it on the slideshow. All right. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. So thank you. Huge thank you to Brian and to Sawtooth for having me. I've had the privilege of speaking at the conference for a few years running now, and it's always a great time. If you aren't already signed up to attend the conference, I highly recommend you do. Tons of great info and a lot of fun. So this year I'll be talking about a segmentation project that I ran last year. And basically, we were looking to better understand the types of consumers that were shopping in the premium audio space. And so we'd used a couple of different segmentation models in the past. They worked pretty well. Our primary segmentation model was getting a little bit long in the tooth. It had been around for a number of years, and we felt we kind of needed a refresh to address some of the sort of new issues coming up and new directions that the company wanted to take. So we wanted to do a refresh. And also we had some new applications that we wanted to try to bring the segmentation to. And so we wanted to build something from the ground up that would really kind of address all these different questions. So what I'm going to be talking about at the conference is actually not going to be very heavy on math, which is a bit of a departure for me, but rather more about the business side of what we did and some of the conversations that we had with our key stakeholders and kind kind of the more general direction that we took for understanding the requirements, building the consensus that we needed to make the ultimate model really actionable and also very engaging, while also, believe it or not, simplifying the model and really helping us streamline the variables. And in the end, kind of getting that clarity helped us with our variable selection. And so I will walk you through the first couple of steps as kind of a preview of what we'll be talking about. So generally speaking, this is kind of the outline of what we did. And the first step was identifying those key stakeholders, really understanding their needs. In particular, we wanted to understand the specifics around what they wanted to do, some examples. We chose our segmentation dimensions based on those conversations, used that to inform the variables that we ultimately wanted to include. Put that together into the survey, built the survey, programmed it, executed it, reviewed the variables again, and then we finally built, refined, and chose our model, and then we put it all into action. So the slides I have will go into a little bit of detail. Maybe I'll talk through like the first point or two, and then give you kind of just like a quick overview of sort of where it all ended up. So we started with identifying our key stakeholders. Before we even opened a Python shell or started up Excel or anything like that, we really wanted to understand who was going to be using this. So we wanted to find the teams that were like most enthusiastic about putting together a segmentation and also identifying some of the places where it could add the most value. Once we'd kind of spotted those people, we really needed to understand like what did actionable look like to them. So we also picked our primary and secondary stakeholders. There were a lot of different teams and a lot of different potential applications for this. And I don't want to say some of them were more important than others, but there were some groups that were kind of our primary focus, and then some groups where it was like, okay, great, if they can apply this, that's awesome, but we knew we had to kind of narrow it down because it couldn't be all things to all people. So we made sure we aligned those expectations early so people wouldn't be disappointed. And then when we came down to trying to understand how they were going to use this, so again, that whole like, what did actionable look like to them? We really dug in and made them give examples. And we, would kind of push on them to make sure that we had some really concrete examples of, hey, what kinds of decisions are you going to make? But also like, can you give me an example of one of those decisions? Because that really helped us get a lot of clarity on what we actually needed the segmentation to do. I keep like peeking over here because I can't see the time when I'm in presentation mode, and I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for everybody. So generally speaking, when we thought about how we were going to be using the segmentation and who our stakeholders were, in this case, they fell sort of across the organization, not just in marketing, but also in product. Our primary stakeholders were in product development and product marketing. As well as some folks in marketing who are kind of a little bit more on the like go-to-market end, where they were doing sort of some of the end product of getting things out the door. Also things like portfolio development, understanding, as we built out a portfolio in a particular category, which types of people were buying in sort of which price bands or which groups, things like that. So these were all like examples of the types of questions we wanted to be able to answer. And then further on the marketing side, also being able to understand like if we're going to be buying media or how we're gonna build a message that maybe speaks to a particular type of audience, and then how we're going to go find that audience in the wild. So these were some examples of the types of things that we knew we would need the segmentation to do. And so we wanted to kind of go into this with that in mind, so that as we sort of built up through the steps, we had a very clear picture of what the end result was going to look like and how we wanted to use it. Let's see. Obviously, a big part of all of this is getting stakeholder buy-in. it's all fine and well for me to come up with this like awesome segmentation and be like, trust me, I'm a scientist. But if the people that are going to use the segmentation just aren't feeling it for whatever reason, it's going to fall flat. So that was a big part too of why we wanted to get those stakeholders in on the game really early on, really take the time to understand what it was that they were looking for. So that they would feel confident in the results. So we asked them about their desired outcomes, what do they want it to do, their expectations, particularly in terms of, say, comparing to previous segmentations. Did they feel that some of the prior segmentations kind of fell short or weren't really applicable in certain things that they like wanted to do? And then finally, just asking them straight out, like what would help them feel comfortable that this new segmentation model would meet their needs. Because especially in, talking to people who are in product development or marketing, perhaps aren't going to have a thorough understanding of the details behind the model, and that's okay. But so we wanted them to feel good that when we presented it to them and said, hey, we've built this from the ground up, it's all data informed. Here are your, number of segments. Here's who they are. Here's how you find them. That they look at that and say, awesome, let's do it. Rather than being concerned about like, well, how did you get there? We wanted them to be part of the process of getting there so that they would feel good about it. Let's see. I'll kind of breeze through the next couple of steps as a little bit of a preview to what we'll go into a little more depth with as far as the actual like how this helped us with selecting the variables and choosing a model. But just to give you kind of a quick overview, we did sort of generate a bunch of ideas. Obviously, our stakeholders wanted to know a ton of different things about the segments that we were going to create. And so we had to have some talks about the difference between a segmentation variable versus a profiling variable and how we were going to sort of sift through the whole list of all the things we wanted to know to be able to separate those out. And so we had those conversations. And again, it was really great to kind of get alignment on these things because it helped people feel good about the end result. When it came to selecting the questions, we wanted a variety in our survey for a lot of different reasons, subtleties in language, compatibility with commercial data sets. And at the conference, I'll talk about some more details of what that meant to us and how we kind of put that into practice as we had all these conversations and as we started to build the survey itself. Designing the survey, just a lot of different types of questions. Again, binary scale. We did use some max diff, some sort of standard kind of single multi-select survey questions. Reviewed the variables again. So we went through to, look at correlation, response spread. We knew we had sometimes several questions that kind of addressed a single dimension that we wanted to know about. So we had some options to choose from. And so this was sort of a second pass that we took at narrowing down which variables we were actually going to put into the segmentation model itself. Once we were happy with the variable list, we used a latent class analysis to actually build the segmentation. There are many different techniques that you can use to kind of further refine the variables. I know there's a few other talks that are going to be happening at the conference for some of those details on the math side. So definitely tune into those as well. I mostly brute forced it, I'll be honest. Again, I'll give you some details at the conference, but basically tested dozens of models to find the one that we really wanted, that met all of our business requirements and also was mathematically solid, and we were happy with the solution. And then we were able to apply it in a lot of different ways. We built a typing tool to use for future surveys. We were able to map the segments to some commercial databases so that we were able to find more profiling information beyond what we could find ourselves. And we're able to even find some, do some media targeting in some other platforms, which is notoriously difficult, but we actually did a pretty good job with that because we had a really thorough understanding of the segmentation that we kind of built from the ground up. And in the end, the segmentation went really well. It's been adopted across the entire company at this point, primarily in product and marketing. But people are really excited about it, constantly finding new ways to apply it. And it's kind of fun. I because corporate. I can't tell you much about it, and I wish I could, because it actually is a lot of fun. People have really enjoyed kind of identifying with it personally, and I think a lot of that had to do with bringing people into the conversation early so that everybody really knew what it was going to be like and where we were going to end up with it. And it's actually been a really fun exercise to just have people across the company kind of use the typing tool, find out your type, and it really gets people talking, which has helped it really become part of the corporate culture very quickly, which has been great. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up. For some reason, my text isn't showing up here. But for those of you who've seen me talk before, you know this QR code goes to the playlist on Spotify. That is all the little song quotes that appeared throughout the deck in gray along the bottom. This will take you there. So I'll make sure this slide is in the summary deck if you want to get your 80s new wave fix. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Tracey. I graduated high school in the mid-'80s, so I'm going to age myself there, but it was a great decade for music, I have to say. Okay, last but not least, we're going to hear from Jordan. Jordan Gray is the Consumer Insights Manager at Leatherman Tool Group, where he leads the company's research strategy to support marketing and product development initiatives. Prior to joining Leatherman, he worked in tech and telecom research consulting and then in health insurance industry, guiding consumer insight strategy. His expertise spans brand health measurement, advanced analytics techniques like segmentation, MaxDiff, and conjoint analysis. Tell us what you have in store for us at the conference, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and good morning to everyone on the West Coast here. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to present at the Sawtooth Conference next month. Today, we're going to be talking about product research at Leatherman and a case study on a multi-phase research project that we concluded in 2024. This is going to be a shortened version of the presentation from the Sawtooth Conference, so it feels like it ends a little bit abruptly. You'll just have to see what the second half has in store for us later on. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the Leatherman Company, where we come from and what we do. So Leatherman was founded in 1983. We have over 500 employees in the Portland, Oregon headquarters, and that's where we have our 90,000 square foot facility of factory space, where we build multi-tools. This is the original pocket survival tool from 1983. Since then, we create dozens, if not scores, of new and different types of multi-tools for every different situation. But this was the original, which started it all. And now, flash forward to 2025, we build over 8,000 tools a day. Our company has over 600 patents, and Leatherman tools are sold in over 80 countries worldwide. So we're an US-based manufacturing business that sells internationally. So lots of research opportunity and challenges, as you may expect. So what is the research and business problem we are trying to solve? What should we build? We have an 80,000 square foot facility. We can make 8,000 tools per day. So what should we actually build with those capabilities? That includes what implements should be included, the features, the colors, the size of the tool, which materials consumers prefer. Do international customers value the same features as domestic US customers want? And how much should the tool cost? All of these are critical problems and really define whether the products are successful or as successful as they can be. And so what I'm trying to do is layer in research and some different analytics capabilities for us to optimize our product offerings that we take to market for already established and legendary brand. So in 2024, we had a new product development initiative with kind of three main pillars I can talk about publicly. The product should appeal to new customers of Leatherman Tool Group. So we want to bring new customers into the Leatherman fold if you haven't been exposed to us before. The product should have international as well as domestic viability. So it's not just a USA-based product. We want international customers to find value in the offering as well. And it needs to be innovative and show a unique value proposition. So we're looking to do new and push the envelope from what we've created in the past. If you're a researcher, you know that we can have some big goals, big objectives, but we always run into constraints. So the constraints for this particular project include we only have one researcher at Leatherman, that's me. I don't have a team, so I have to figure out how to use resources effectively and external partners when it makes sense in order to scale the type of research we want to conduct. There's also, I'm sure many people can relate to this, limited budget that must be used efficiently. So we don't get a second chance at this. We need to get the information and all the information we possibly can before we start building those products, because once the die is cast, so to speak, that is what we will be taking to market. It's very, very difficult to make changes once you've landed on what you actually want to build. Like I said previously, the research needs to be conducted internationally and in multiple languages, which adds a layer of complexity to research. The data needs to be robust, comprehensive, and really it's focused on users in the product and marketing departments. So I'm not working with, like people on this call, people who are very familiar with, say, MaxDiff or conjoint or advanced analytics or even beyond basic level statistics. So you have to have results that can be translated and conveyed to the product and marketing department so that they can take action with those results. The objectives need to have qualitative as well as quantitative insights, and we had to socialize those results at the end of the year 2024. And this was to inform the final prototype engineering so that we can take it to market in the future. So in total, it was about 6 months, maybe 7 months for multiple phases of research. And that actually included prototype development, which took some additional time in between the research phases. So the approach we took was a multi-phase research approach, starting with an international MaxDiff. This was panel source sample, a 15-minute online survey, which if you're familiar with MaxDiff, our goal was to quantify implement preferences and really find out what were the most important implements that we needed to include in the tools and the multi-tools and which ones were unnecessary or maybe had more niche appeal. Once we found out from that international MaxDiff what appealed to different customers around the world, product and engineering used those results from the MaxDiff to develop 3 distinct prototypes. Our research partner Escalent really recommended we had 3 very different prototypes that we took to phase 2 of the research. And this was so that we could understand, not minute differences, but really what's resonating in a unique offering. And I think that was a really strong recommendation that I would also state, like if you're going to do qualitative or something like that, having very distinct prototypes to look at is very, very helpful. And then the phase 2 of the research is the international mixed method prototype testing. And this was a really interesting method. We combined qualitative and quantitative methodologies in that we conducted focus groups. The participants were able to interact with the multi-tools, with the prototypes, and then they actually moved on to a survey, including a conjoint exercise within the same 55-minute interview. So we had the ability to capture that kind of firsthand assessment from the participants. And then with that knowledge, with that understanding of what the products were, they went straight into the conjoint. And without going into too much detail, I really felt this generated high quality conjoint data. Sometimes you can be skeptical of perhaps panel sample, or if they aren't able to see what you're testing, in person, there's always that kind of like wondering, what do they actually think of what we're putting in front of them? So that phase 2 mixed method approach was really the culmination of this research study and understanding what participants thought of the prototype offerings. And finally, the results of these initiatives were delivered in December in 2024. Now I'm going to be sharing phase 1 results. I won't be sharing the phase 2 results. That will come at the research conference next month, but we're going to get into a little bit of the math now. So starting on the left, this is a little bit of the explanation of what we're looking at. This is from the International MaxDiff study. It's N of 1,800, and the population of interest was USA and 5 international markets. Like I said, it's a 15-minute online survey. And our research partner, Escalent, handled translations and data collection, while I conducted the analysis in-house using SPSS and Lighthouse Studio. Now, I'm sure most of the people on this call are familiar with MaxDiff, but you're not. It's a discrete choice exercise where you're looking at which of a series of items is most and least important. In this case, we showed 5 items per screen. And what the data is showing us here is this is the rescaled importance score data for the 24 items that we tested in this study, or it might be 23 actually. And these numbers sum to 100, and they are ratios of one another. So things at the top of the scale, maybe twice as important as something in the midline, or over 10 times as important as something falling in this kind of lower third. Now, this chart on the right, I've been using this visualization for a while, but if you haven't seen this before, there's another output you can get from your MaxDiff studies, which is the percent most and percent least important. And I think this helps kind of ground the results for non-practitioners so that they can get a better feel for what an 11.8 or a 4.2 importance score means. And so again, if you're unfamiliar with this, this rank 1 item 21, 67% of the respondents selected that as being the most important item or implement when it showed up in the MaxDiff, and only 2% said it was the least important. And it follows down in this kind of linear path, but you can see some differences here as far as polarizing results, or if, you know, the same proportion of respondents are saying it's not useful and it is useful. So I think it just adds to the explanatory power of the MaxDiff, and it's a really useful visualization to kind of, again, contextualize the results for non-practitioners. And the last slide I'm going to end with is these are the aggregate results, N of 1,800 across all those markets we were talking about. But because we used such a large sample size and we wanted to understand the differences across these markets, we actually, I ran individual MaxDiffs for each of the segments of interest that we had sufficient sample size for. So if you see in this big eye chart up above, we have the sample sizes here and the different segments of interests above the columns. And it was a really interesting conversation with Brian about this study. We learned a lot internally, but at the end of the day, the results are relatively consistent regardless of the market or population of interest. There are some differences for specific markets which resonated with our internal experts. They expected some of those differences, so it was good that the data was reflecting what we interpreted to be reality. You can also see something like activity 4 and 5. There's an attribute down here that does surprisingly well, perhaps. So you'd have to figure out what activity is it that is utilizing that feature, perhaps. And obviously, we know each of these. And again, it's resonating and reflecting reality in the market. So that's basically what I wanted to share this first phase of this research. After these MaxDiff results were collected and shared internally, that's when the engineering and product teams built the 3 prototypes for the next phase of the research, which is that international mixed method qualitative conjoint study. But this was really the point where they started to decide which features should make it into those prototypes and what should we build before testing in that second phase. And again, we'll be sharing the results from that second phase in the Sawtooth Conference next month. And that's all I have, Brian, unless you have any questions.
Those are some fantastic visualizations coming from the MaxDiff side. And when you think about conjoint being applied to products, I mean, when you come up with something like a Leatherman tool, or Legos, or something that is a kind of building block and has features, it just seems to fit so naturally into conjoint analysis. So it's fun when we can find those examples that resonate so easily and well with us. And thanks for those visualizations. I hope that the way that Jordan presented the data, the bests and the worsts, right next to the importance score coming out of the hierarchical Bayesian logit, the way that he showed the heat map for the segmentation, I thought it was very clever. So thanks so much for that nice work to Jordan and Tracey and Suhasini. With that, Justin, maybe you'll help us wrap up. You think he has some parting words, and we also have maybe some Q&A to address.
Yeah, definitely want to get to the Q&A, so please stick around. Hey, everybody, you can turn your cameras on. Our 3 speakers, go ahead and turn your cameras on, and we'll get to those questions. Just before we do, Brian, you're the best person to just kind of give a quick summary of what our conference is, what it is coming up. Also, Brian, if you could address, like, we'd love everybody to come to the conference, but if they can't come to the conference, what options do they have to kind of like hear and see these full presentations?
Excellent. Well, about every year, around 150 of us convene at conferences, and we're going to be at New Orleans this year. May 7th through 9th. I'll get it right. May 7th through 9th. And these are 3 of the about 24 speakers And these folks are from corporate research, but we also have folks from consultancies and also some academics who are speaking on a variety of topics covering AI, market segmentation, content analysis, MaxDiff, and a few other things. It is not a software training or a software sales event. Certainly Sawtooth is hosting it, but the folks presenting are using a wide variety of tools and techniques, not necessarily Sawtooth, so you can learn a lot. In fact, 20% of the people that come to the Sawtooth conference every year are not even customers of ours. And so it's just a broad interest marketing sciences event. If you miss it, if you can't come in person, we have a virtual option for about half the price of the regular attendance. You can subscribe to the virtual feed. It's going to be delayed. We're going to record the sessions. The sessions will be recorded and the slides will be available. So at your own pace and after the conference is held, you can access all the videos and slides. So I'd recommend that as well.
Don't we also we publish the proceedings right afterwards?
Yeah, about 8 months after the conference is over, each of these people, Jordan, Suhasini, and Tracey, will be writing probably 10 to 20 pages summarizing what they have presented in their slides. So that's an additional thing that we do at the Sawtooth Conference that gives value and a memory to the conference, because we can look to past conference proceedings. Past conference proceedings are up on our website for free download, clear back to 1987. So it's a vast store of information and knowledge that we carry going forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Thanks. So yeah, let's go into the Q&A. Tracey, there's a question there at the top. I don't know if you see that, if you'd like to answer that. And then Brian, you can kind of guide us through the rest of the questions and maybe ask a few of your own.
Sure. Let's see. It says, it's helpful to understand such a critical side of segmentation research, ensuring relevance and obtaining buy-in. How important was the VP plus level involvement on your team's end towards gaining stakeholder buy-in? That's a good question. So the people that I spoke with that were actually part of the team were pretty much at the director level. So we've got the contributors, the managers, then the directors, and then the VPs, and then kind of our C-suite, senior leadership people. And so I'd say the director folks were the ones that were most closely involved because they sort of had the most immediate need for it as they kind of planned their work, and they're the ones kind of contributing a lot to things like portfolio decisions and marketing decisions. I would say above that, more so than like buy-in on the details, which is kind of what I talked about a lot, is sort of buy-in on like, okay, which dimensions are we going to use and stuff like that. The vice presidents, I would say, didn't care as much about that, but getting their enthusiasm was really important. So getting the directors not just on board with how we were going to build the segmentation, but getting them excited about it and those possibilities meant that they were kind of taking that up the chain to their boss, and then it was going up to their boss, and getting that enthusiasm further up, I think, was the most helpful part. So maybe a little more general than buy-in on like the specifics of what we were doing, but more buy-in on kind of the concept and what potential it had for us.
Super. Maybe we move on to Suhasini, and she can look at some of the questions that were asked of her and maybe elaborate just a little bit.
Yes, so I think the first question was that if you use Sawtooth, so as Brian alluded, we actually did not use Sawtooth. We used the Next Intelligence Inca platform, and they have quite a bit of case studies that we've done with them in terms of for conversational AI, smart probing. So we've used them. And then I think the other question that I got was if you can share any examples. Again, that would be more suited for the conference and the paper that will be happening next month. So I think more on that. I think that was pretty much what I had, Brian. If I'm missing anything, I think that was it.
Maybe Jordan, maybe you can refer to a couple of the questions that were asked of you and elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, let me work my way back. One was on sample size for the conjoint, smaller than 1800. So we ended with 166. We recruited for 50 across 3 markets internationally, and we ended with 166 in total. So that was the sample size for the qualitative conjoint phase of the study.
That's because the folks were there in person. I mean, it was an extension of like an IDI or a focus group, right?
Yeah, you basically cut a focus group in half, and then half the time was the prototype assessment, and then you shuffled everyone in to start taking the surveys. So you lose a little bit of the depth you would gain from the qualitative research, but you gain, I feel like we really gained that back on the quantitative side, and really seeing down to the N of 1 level what individuals were interested in was really, really helpful. And I would say it's probably close to the minimum you would want to use for sample size for something like that, and more robust is better. But obviously, like I said, constraints and costs always kind of get in the way. The only other question I would probably want to bring up is the max diff results. We did do hierarchical Bayesian analysis. I think the question was referring to the bar chart and then the heat map. That's the same data. The aggregate from the heat map is the same as the aggregate from the bar chart previously. And then I just extended out using the HB for each of those individual segments and kind of pieced it all together, which is where you see the sample size differences across the top.
Jordan, can you address a little bit more this idea of using conjoint analysis with really small sample sizes, maybe even just a dozen or 20 people that are in a focus group? Is it just too small to even bother with, or does it really enhance in a real quantitative way, objective way, preferences that are meaningful and in some cases, with some caution, can be projected to a larger audience?
I'm sure you could speak much more eloquently on this topic than I can, but I would just say that as long as you understand the context, is when we're sharing these results, this is a specific audience. It's not market share that we're looking at, right? This project was about product optimization and really seeing how do we make the best prototype or go-to-market offering that we can. And as long as everyone understood that this isn't the market share that we're coming out of at the product launch, I think we're in a good spot. Regarding the small sample sizes, I think convergence is really important. So if you're not seeing that, it's kind of a little bit back to the drawing board. But we saw really consistent results. It was really high RLH numbers as well. So again, just having an in-person being there and invested in the exercise as opposed to where we have less visibility into that for, say, panel sample, I think gives a huge benefit even at the smaller sample size thresholds.
Thanks. Maybe I can loop back to Suhasini. You were injecting some open ends with that were kind of these AI chatbots after every few CBC tasks. So the respondent would answer a few CBC tasks, and then they might see an open end, right, that would ask them, "Why did you choose what you just chose?" Was that annoying to respondents? Did it cause people to drop out? Did it make people, on the other hand, did it make them happier with the survey? Did they stick with it? And do you think it was worth the extra time?
No, absolutely. So as far as we know, we actually also had an enjoyability score. So let me kind of give you a little bit of the setup. So we had 8 tasks, and in those 8 tasks, we had about 3 open ends that were interspersed. And again, the thing to note is those open ends were not really specific to a product or a price point or anything. It was more general, right? Like trying to understand more the reasoning behind, the different permutation combinations we gave them, what choices they made and why. So it was a little more exploratory and not as specific. And we actually got pretty verbose responses from them. And we also had an enjoyability score, right? Like with the open ends, it also increased the survey length. And we did not really see any grave impact on the model or any of that thing. The enjoyability score was actually higher than a standard conjoint survey. And I think the reason being is it was more engaging for them, which made them talk more, be a little more honest, authentic, more open, which turned out great for us.
Super. Tracey, could I ask you a little bit about, I know that here at Sawtooth, our own Keith Shunn is a real expert in market segmentation, and I think I think that we assigned him as your steering committee oversight. Can you refer to a little bit about what's called the curse of dimensionality, or also known as throw the kitchen sink into the segmentation, throw hundreds of basis variables into the segmentation, and doesn't that give us a better result? Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no. Keith is amazing. Yeah, and if you haven't listened to his webinar on segmentation, highly recommend it. Super helpful, lots of great tips. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, the temptation is to kind of throw everything in, thinking that, okay, well, the more variables and the more dimensions that we throw in, the more robust the segmentation will be, because it'll take into account all of these different factors.
It's tempting to think that.
Yes, yeah, it is very tempting, and it's definitely an interesting conversation, something that I'll elaborate a bit on in the talk at the conference, is kind of how we had that conversation with the stakeholders, because those of us who have done latent class analysis or clustering algorithms and are kind of familiar with how that works sort of understand mathematically why that doesn't actually work. But when we talk,
tell us, for some of us who might not know.
Well, so some of the problems that you run into are math problems with things like multicollinearity. So when you have more than one variable that essentially measures the same thing, you'll get a lot of the same responses. And so without kind of going into the details, it creates mathematical problems with the model. You might run into stability issues of getting the same solution each time. It also,
and in
just
hyperspace, it actually draws the segments closer together. You want segments that differ, but the more and more you throw into the hopper in hyperspace, the more everything actually sucks together. And that's really counterintuitive to a lot of people. But if you think through the math, and if you're smarter than I am, it's going to occur to you why that's happening.
Yeah, it gets messy, and then it gets hard to explain as well, because now you have all of these different dimensions kind of coming into the situation, and it makes it harder to get sort of clear definitions of who's in any given segment. It makes it messier to sort of separate the segments from each other, and that's always going to be the case to a certain extent. I mean, segments aren't nice, neat little blocks, but it definitely
probably try focusing on 20 or fewer basis variables, maybe, instead of 200 or more. I mean, I'm speaking in generalities, but we look forward to hearing more on all these kinds of topics at the conference. I really appreciate your effort and time. You're doing it out of the goodness of your heart and your desire to share information with the community. So we really appreciate that. And Justin, do you have anything else that you saw come out, something you'd like to see addressed, or are we feeling pretty good?
Feeling good. We really appreciate the three of you coming on and not only doing the webinar, but also presenting at the conference. I would look forward to seeing more of you. We're going to send a recording out to everyone who registered for this event, this webinar. And also we will have these summary slides. And until next time, guys, thanks everybody. And we'll wrap this up. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.